Hello, innovators. I am Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today I'm talking with David Bell, host of the Pocket Mastermind. Thanks for coming on the Polymath Polycast.
Hey, welcome. How are you doing?
Good. You?
Yeah, really good. Really good.
You
Yeah.
had me on your show. Now you're coming on to my show. It's
Yeah,
going to be a great little
exactly. Yeah.
trade there.
I
So
have to
please,
keep an eye out.
please say hello to the innovators in the audience.
Hi, innovators. How are you doing?
I like to call them the innovators because I feel like the people who are watching or listening to this show, they're the
Yeah.
people who are entrepreneurs or polymaths or people who are wanting to make a change. So I think that having you with this Pocket Mastermind concept on the show is a really good combination.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Hello and welcome to the Polymath Polycast interviews and discussions. So one way I like to break the ice is to ask you to share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
That's a very good question. Nobody knows about me. God, there's not much that people don't know about me. I grew up very shy, and that's something that kind of tends to surprise quite a lot of people. I've talked about this only very occasionally, and so people kind of think, well, this is an odd thing to do for somebody who's shy, run a podcast. But I kind of worked my way through that over the years. It still comes back from time to time when I do something new in particular. But I ended up in a band when I was in my early 20s. That's one way of getting rid of your shyness.
Yeah, definitely.
The first gig I ever did, I literally ran up on stage, played, and then ran away again. So I gradually developed over that from that point on.
Do you consider yourself an introvert or
Do you know
extroverted?
what? I don't really know whether I'm introverted or extroverted. I think a lot of people meet me and think I'm probably extroverted. I enjoy being around people, but quite often it's like once you get a good group of people, I love the conversation and the stimulation you get from groups of people. Walking into a room where it's like cold relationships, that was never my favorite thing. And actually doing this kind of thing is really good for that because you're out of your comfort zone.
Well, and one thing I find is that a lot of people are more ambiverted, meaning kind of more of a mix between them than they realize. And I think that you might be as well, but maybe leaning more towards introversion or something like that. I'm actually opposite. I lean more towards extroversion. That makes me think, though, there's also the whole idea of introvert versus extrovert is like, where do you get your energy from? But then there's things like stage fright. Like you ran right off. The first night, I love being on stage. Even the first night I ever did it, I loved it. But my leg was shaking so hard, I had to go sit down because I was so nervous. And that now I get a thrill out of it. I get a little too cocky, honestly, on stage. When I'm singing with karaoke before all the quarantine, I would walk off into the middle of the floor and just start singing in the middle of the floor, just to show off kind of thing. But the thing is,
which is where I ended up. So I ended up walking out into the, but I went from that first gig of doing nothing to walking out into the middle of the crowd and dancing whilst playing the guitar. And so
exactly.
Go completely different, extremes. But I learned that. It took me. I had to learn. It wasn't natural like it was for you.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was super natural for me. I think I still had to teach myself how to be comfortable on stage because it still took a while to get used to. So that's why I think it's not just like the introversion. It's also just a matter of getting out of your comfort zone and practice. And then there's a difference between like stage fright and being shy. Because when I'm approaching someone new, I'm a bit shy, even though I'm a very gregarious person. So I think that I empathize and I understand you in a way that other people might not. So I feel like we're similar.
Yeah, it is. It's very true. And interestingly enough, the drummer who's in the band, he never really got over that stage fright thing quite often. But if it was a larger gig or if it was our own stuff rather than like a covers gig that we used to do to pay the bills, he'd throw up quite often before playing. And he'd played for years and years and years. But still had, and I never had that I never really had that stage fright. It was just more of a
comfort zone.
Fear of screwing it up. Yeah.
Well, I think that this little tangent that we had here is actually probably pretty useful considering the topics we're going to talk about today too. It's about getting out of your comfort zone and becoming more and having that personal growth for sure. Yeah. So you started the Pocket Mastermind podcast and blog, but what got you started before all that? What was your mindset?
So I guess I've been on quite a journey. When I was younger, I kind of always had this feeling that I wanted to do something that was worthwhile, but no idea what the hell that was. When I went in the band, I thought, I'm going to be a rock star. That's what it's all about. It's going to be something. It's bigger. I just knew. Just had this feeling I wasn't designed for a box, right? However, the band didn't work out for whatever reason, and it was time to go and get a proper job, right? Be sent and go back into the corporate world, and so it never sat right, but I knew what I had to do was to learn skills, develop skills, and move up and be tactical about the journey I went on. Going in on entry-level sales roles, I knew that I could develop the skills I needed to then move, zigzag my way up through the organization, which is what I did. And then a couple of years ago, while I was running client services and sales teams for an insurance company, I kind of came to the conclusion that I just didn't want to do that. I couldn't do this forever. The money was great, but it becomes like selling your soul. Right. And I figured that had to be the last corporate role. I wanted to do something else after that role. And so I started to put plans in place of how can I make sure that I'm in a position to be able to do that? Because the number one thing really is finances. If you want to do whatever you want to do, most people, if you said, oh, if you could do anything, what would it be? Like, money is no object. I'd imagine that at least 90% of people pick something other than what they actually do. So the only thing restricting them is money. And then you have to unpick that further. Well, how could you make money not so much of a blockage or anything like that, right? So one of the things that makes money a issue for us is how much we spend. And so the first thing I started to look at was actually how can I reduce some of the outgoings? How can I get to a place where I'm actually financially independent enough that I get to choose what I want to do in the future? Yeah. And so that's what I made that decision a couple of years ago. And then at the start of this year, redundancy came up, and it was like the perfect ticket, right? I get paid to leave a role I didn't enjoy doing anymore that I'd already planned 2 years ago to exit from. So perfect. Then comes the big question, well, then what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And through that journey, I really found that what I really got the fulfillment from was actually coaching other people. I'd made that journey. I'd zigzagged my way up from an entry level field sales position up to a senior director into, in a large organization. And during that time, I used to see that I would advertise for roles, and I would get this broad spectrum of people that would apply in age, right? From early 20s into early mid 40s. And I said, well, what is it that makes people with a 20-year age gap apply for the same role? I would expect the kind of role that I was often advertising for would be an earlier stage, early career stage type role. And I started to realize that it's mindset, right? Everything falls down into what we see ourselves as. What do we identify ourselves as? And I started to work with people to say, well, what do you want? Who do you want to be? And once people started to think broader, then they started to open up their horizons and start to plan where they wanted to go with their lives. Because the most common question I used to ask people when I interview them and stuff, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to do next? And quite often it'd be, well, it depends what the opportunities are, right? And you go,
got a plan.
That doesn't sound like a plan to me.
Yeah.
That sounds like you're going to take what's given to you, and that's the difference. And so when I left the last role and knowing that I wanted to do something to help other people, I wanted to spend more time trying to help other people break out of that box that they've got themselves into for whatever reason.
Well, and David, let's try to unpack that there, because you started out with the idea of like the expenses, and I think it's very important to retract how much you're spending. If you wanted to do something new or novel, or like especially during the quarantine, for example, where you literally I went from having 20 hours a week, which is still only part-time, to only 3 hours a week. And so I had no income basically. Yeah. And I know a lot of people were in the same boat as me. And so I tried to maximize that time as much as possible. But even a couple of years ago, I started reducing my expenses, cutting down how much I'm spending on food, trying not to go out as much, or like even go out to eat as much, and try to just, I went from like maybe $800 expenditure to $600. And I think that because of that, I didn't have to make as much money. My rent was already cheapest.
You got a 25% pay rise immediately then.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and bear this in mind, I live in Missouri, which is one of the cheapest places in the country, I would feel like. My rent is literally like a fourth of what like San Francisco might pay. Yeah. And the thing is, that's for me and my roommate total. And so it's one of those things where even that I'm still struggle to afford, because I've cut it down so small, my income's so small. But because I reduced, I'm able to live pretty comfortably because of that, at least last year before quarantine. And so it's interesting because I think that if people can realize that, hey, there's something I can change right now to make a difference in my life. And then the other thing you were saying too is the mindset behind it. The people who are 20 years old and 40 years old or even 60 are all applying for the same job because in their mindset, they're part of that position in that career. And one thing I noticed is that people have multiple careers throughout their life. Even if you work for the same company for 40 years, you have one career in sales and then career in management, career in upper management. And those are different skill sets, as you know, that you need to employ. So it's a different mindset. You may be at the start of that career in the middle of your lifespan, so to speak.
Yeah, well, you look at the career history of most large like S&P 500 CEOs or the FTSE 100 CEOs, and watch what their career path has been like. They've always moved from different departments. More often than not, they have a sales background. Sometimes they have a finance background, but quite often it's sales and marketing. They tend to travel their way and zigzag through different organizations to do a few years here and a few years there, and they're picking up skills along the way that gives them enough knowledge to be able to have a good understanding of an organization to run it from the top and from the front. What you tend to see other people do is get stuck either just going up in a straight line, which comes to an end at some point because you've only got so many skills. So you can't just be, I think people, the old way was just go in and do a job and then you get to a certain level and stay there. But if you've got aspirations and you want to climb up the corporate ladder, if that's your thing, then you need to develop the skills that will enable you to be a good people leader and a good strategist. It's not just being good at being an accountant. It's not just being good at being a particular skill set. You've got to broaden that skill set, and I think that's what's not taught, right? And kind of everything's like work really hard on your job, but Jim Rohn, I quote him a million times over, is like, you got to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. What skills do you need to develop to make you a good candidate, to add more value, to be able to move on? And then if you want to go off and do your own thing as well, you're going to need those skills too. But
definitely,
you either get the people that just go in that dead straight line and get stuck, or they kind of, sales is a classic for this, and this is what the example I was using was, they go, right, I'm going to be, I want to go into sales, get a field sales role or whatever, and then they get stuck in that role because they're not thinking laterally. All they're thinking is the pyramid, right? If you're in a field sales team, you've probably got a field sales manager, and if you're lucky, there might be one above that. And then you're into like COO or something else like that. There's very limited opportunity for moving. And so they get frustrated and think, well, I'm going to move somewhere else. And they just go to another company in the same role. Well, it's not going to, progress your career. You've got to start thinking laterally. My advice to anybody, if you're in those kind of roles, is think about how the hell you get out of it as quick as you possibly can. Get the skills you need, and then think laterally and get out, do something else that's going to give you more skills.
Well, David, you are literally speaking to the choir here. This is the polymath polycast there. That's perfect because you're self-education and interdisciplinary skills. Those are the two key points I think you made there. And correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially speaking, those are, I think, are traits of a polymath or someone who's generalist in this way. And I think that those who are successful are much more generalist than people realize. If you get too specialist, you can be successful. There's been plenty of people who are a diehard specialist in one area and manage to innovate something. But they're so far and few in between. It's the specialists who have a generalist breadth of knowledge, the T-chart, so to speak, of knowledge. They're obviously their deep knowledge level, but they also have a wide range of 100%. Interdisciplinary translatable skills, like you're saying, that they can move around different areas.
100%. Like I say, most CEOs have a pretty broad background. Most founders have some kind of broad background and experience. It's the vision, it's the strategy. It's very hard, I think, to have a good broad horizon view, a broad strategy view, if you're very much specialized in one particular area. The best leaders in the world have big vision, and then they employ people with very specific skills to execute very specific tasks. Not the other way around. For a reason, right?
That whole was basically part of the intro there. So actually, I want to dig into some of the questions now. I think that's perfect. Like, I mean, it's been 20 minutes there, and it's already just been an intro. That's fantastic. That's how we know that the rest of the episode's going to go well. Let's start off with, what is a Pocket Mastermind?
So the idea behind Pocket Mastermind is, It's basically a pool of resource. So through conversations on the podcast, through different content and materials, it's providing you, a listener, a reader, anybody who's looking to progress themselves, a resource where they have access to the thoughts and the experiences of lots of other people. So the podcast, for example, interviewing people like yourself and other guests, is, you know, your take on life. What are you trying to achieve? How are you trying to achieve it? What are the challenges you faced? How have you overcome those challenges? All of that stuff people can then get to listen into and say, actually, you know, maybe I want to pursue that. It's an idea. I didn't think of that. I didn't think I could do that as a living. Or someone else has the same worries or fears or challenges that I do, but they've managed to overcome them. And that's really the idea of the Pocket Mastermind. It's like having your own mastermind, a virtual mastermind, in your pocket.
Yeah. That's great. And it's interesting because our goals are different, but I think the similarities of what we're trying to achieve is kind of really cool, because we both want to change how people think. Like, hey, I didn't realize this was possible. Let's go ahead and try something like that. Yours is more goals and like mindset and personal growth centric. Mine is a bit personal growth as well, but it's more about like, hey, I can do this many different things and not be unsuccessful because people think it's lack of focus. It's more about just spreading your wings. That's great. And so what do you hope to gain in mindset from hosting this show, your show?
Well, I you know, part of the initial idea around starting this was, hey, I get to speak to lots of people,
building your
how
network.
they do stuff. Yeah. And so from my own point of view, it's getting out of my own head. I get to speak to lots of people and understand how they're going about the challenges. What have they done that they found was successful? What were the things that weren't successful? And so the whole point of it really was like, I get to benefit from all these conversations, and everyone else gets to listen in. And that's really what it comes down to, is different ideas. It's all about getting different ideas.
Well, that's one thing I love about having these interviews on my show too, is like building that network and seeing what other people think. I would consider myself relatively an expert on polymath, just the concept of it. But I asked my guests, something I'm going to ask you later too, is like, what is a polymath to you? And when I ask that, I never expect to understand like what people are going to say. And then the things they say, even for those who literally just learned what a polymath was, the level of like mindset behind it, I think is just amazing. And just the answers I get from the same question is just always so nuanced.
Because everyone has such different takes.
And it just makes it so interesting.
Yeah, I've now got some very standard questions that I ask at the end of my podcast, and the last one is, if you had 1 hour to spend with anybody, dead or alive, who would that one person be? And you would be astonished that all of the different takes you get, from a family member to the best one. I think the best one I had so far was George Washington, because I'd love to see his reaction to what has been done with the founding fathers, whether he would be approving of. Oh,
he wouldn't. He wouldn't.
State of the Union. So I thought that was quite an interesting response.
Regardless of if you're team blue or team red, we're a nation that's super divided, and we weren't supposed to be. I think I said Leonardo da Vinci when you asked me that question, actually.
Yes.
What do you hope the audience gets from it? You kind of said something about that, but.
Again, similar to what I'm trying to get from it, it's a different perspective. It's a different way of seeing the world and a different way of approaching your life. You can only respond to any given scenario based on the knowledge and experience that you currently have in your head, right? If you read, you get more people's ideas, more people's perspectives, and that gives you more skills to deal with the situations that come at you in life. If you listen to other people's experiences directly through podcasts, through YouTube, through whatever, you get more ideas and perspectives. The more you can absorb other people's learnings and other people's perspectives, the higher the base you have to build on.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I said to somebody a while ago that, if we didn't interact with each other and we were just completely solitary, we'd probably all spend our lives trying to invent the wheel. We're fortunate enough to know that the wheel already exists, and no one wastes their time trying to do that. So we're always building upon the people and the inventions, the innovation that has come before us. and without that we would be way back. So you look at stuff that gets developed now and you think, well, it seems obvious, doesn't it? Why didn't they do that 100 years ago? You've got to go on that iterative process, but you can speed your own process up by learning from others.
Well, and when you said that, it kept making me think of the macro scale too, of how we develop as a society. And I think social media is going to be a big deal about that. Like, I don't think people realize how much of an infancy we're in with social media. It's so still new. And this is the second, like they're basically toddlers now. Back in the late 2010s, or no, yeah, the late 2010s or early 2010s or late 2000s. That's what I was meaning. Late 2000s, early 2010s. That's when they were like a baby. All these social media platforms are evolving, becoming into being. Twitter was still like a completely different beast back then, even though it hasn't changed very much. It's just the way people use it has changed. So it's interesting how
people are just more angry. That's what
that's for sure. Well, and you know what I find interesting is that I actually experimented with blockchain social platforms. So all these platforms like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, they're centralized. They have one company running it, and so everything that they choose, we have to basically suffer from, which is why there was a whole ad apocalypse on YouTube. However, with the blockchain, there's these new social networks such as like Hive or DTube, which is an alternative to YouTube, and Hive is like an alternative to Reddit and Medium. And so these interesting different platforms, even some for Facebook, Twitter, and all these other kinds of different platforms, they have decentralized alternatives. And so these platforms have no one central governing authority. It's a democratic system where people basically vote by like, hey, I like this, I don't like this. And it gets pushed down the algorithm based on that, quite like Reddit in a way. However, I think that with these new platforms, people can have a little bit more of a voice if they create good content. And it's not just, hey, this isn't engage with people, we're going to push you down the algorithm. It's more of like, hey, this is really great content, no matter what, people like it. And that's what matters more so than like the algorithm says it. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, that's the thing, I think, with, Facebook and Instagram in particular, all in the same stable, have really got to the place where you almost have to pay to be seen on those platforms now, and that's not supporting content creation. That's supporting commercial advertising, and that's pretty simply all it is. And I think it's gone a bit too far. And they were supposed to be. It was supposed to democratize content creation, right? It makes it easier for the ordinary everyday person to actually be creative and get their content in front of people, because it's supposed to be artistic. But now everything's about pay per click, and how you're gonna, and the only way you can get seen is actually spending money. It's kind of defeats the object, really. And I think that's why TikTok's been so popular, right? Because it's actually organic growth. You can get 1 million views on TikTok.
I wonder, just to check real quick, I wonder how many views I have. Because I've been on there for almost 2 years now, more than most people. But
you were an early adopter. Well, I say the interesting thing with I think TikTok was founded like in 2011, and then no one heard of them for years and years and years.
Well, I started with Musical.ly, which is the kind of thing that got bought out. I have 37,000 likes, which essentially equates to views in a way. I think that's interesting because and my following count is like 2,800, which is the most I've had on any platform. But considering I've been there for so long, there's people who've been on there for a couple months and now have over 1.5 million followers. So I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, they say it's the last place where there's organic growth at the moment until something else comes on. Well,
and they are starting to do ads too, so I'm wondering if that's going to change. But sorry to go on a tangent there. I went on a meaty tangent like rant. I don't know what's going on there, but I just think it's interesting how these blockchain platforms are going to really disrupt these traditional social platforms, and I don't think it's going to take that long for it to do either. All right, next question here. How about that? Any guests that are out of reach right now that you'd like to have on the show?
See, I thought about this question, It would be easy to say there's loads of people out of reach. But I haven't asked. So honestly, don't know. There's certain people I'd love to speak to, that like Tim Ferriss, but he doesn't do interviews. It's because quite clearly on his website, he doesn't do interviews anymore. The master of his own time has actually cut them right down to the point where he doesn't engage in that kind of stuff. So I'd probably say he's a potentially out of reach. But who knows? I think with most people, if you're persistent enough and you have a good enough reason, there's a strong enough why, you could probably get there eventually. That's the way I like to think of it, at least.
Yeah, well, and I think that you also could try to just go on his show And then by doing so, you build a rapport. They always say that like you're 3 people away from the person you want to meet. And there's a lot of people in the like self-productivity, self-development space, like Thomas Frank, Matt Davella, who I've seen grow. Like I watched them from the beginning for the most part, as early on as I could. And I'd want to connect with those people. But at this point, their following count's way out of my reach. And I can't compete with that just yet. And because I don't have the metrics, they're going to probably say no purely based on that, because it's not worth their time per se, even if it's a really engaging conversation, which as we're seeing here, it's pretty easy to do if we can make the right questions, have the right mindset. You and I both came in gung-ho, ready to be. And I have a guest next week that is someone who's a bit out of my reach, but he was wanting to explore and do more shows. And I think I caught him at the right time. So I think it's a matter of catching people at the right time, having the metrics if you can, and then just having a network like you're building now. So I think that both of us could probably do it down the line.
And also, I think humility, don't try and bullshit. I think if I was going to go after somebody that I considered to be in a different league, I'd be going to them with that in mind and trying to understand from them what would encourage them to be part of my show, right? So what metrics what would make it worthwhile for them? What would they need to get out of it? You know, what can I give them? And how do we get to that point? Because knowing that you may not work now, you'd probably always keep that doubt in your head until you know what the criteria is, because the criteria might not be what you think it is.
Yeah.
It might be worse, it might be better. You just don't know. So the worst thing that anyone can ever say to you is no, or no response whatsoever. They're certainly not going to shoot you.
Well, and I think that, like you said, being humble about it and like saying, I don't have the metrics now, but also being open to the fact that they may say no to you now, but it doesn't mean they'll say no to you later. And so if you open the door now and tell them, hey, I don't care when this happens, 10 years from now, 1 year from now, 1 month from now, just know that it's available. And for example, I reached out to Henry Cavill, the guy who plays Superman and The Witcher. And I think it's interesting because that's what I try to do. I try to be humble about it. I didn't get a response. Obviously, he has way too many followers to even see my message. But if he does see it one day, I try to appeal to his more, with both of our shows, being part of a pocket mastermind or being a polymath, I think that it kind of appeals to people's egos. If we could have someone on there, it's a good way to make people feel better. Like, oh, I actually do know what I'm talking about. Or at the very least, for my show, I want to show people that it's okay to be interdisciplinary and to accept that part about themselves. That's one reason why I made this show, because there's a lot of people who think I have to be a specialist. That's the only way to succeed, when I see it differently, and I want other people to see it differently. So I'm hoping that with like your show or my show, we can change people's mindsets and hopefully get them on.
Exactly. And also think outside the box. You know, if I was going to go after somebody that I really wanted to get on my show, most people at a certain level have social media managers, right? They're not half the time, at least they're not doing their own Instagram posts. There's certainly, and their own tweets and various other stuff. A lot of people, it looks like them because it's done very well, but you know, like Gary V, he's got loads of people. He's got his team. Gary does all of his stuff. Tony Robbins, that's Team Tony. They do all of his stuff. And so your chances of getting in front of his actual eyes are very slim. So you got to think, well, how else would you get into that position? You know, if you've ever seen the Netflix documentary Tony Robbins, I'm Not Your Guru, and there's a Brazilian woman in there who he does an intervention on. Now, before that, she made the decision that she had to meet Tony Robbins, and she sold all of her furniture so that she could afford to go to Date with Destiny, and she got picked out of the audience, the 3,000 people, whatever, to have this intervention. And then he supported her and helped her with the coaching. And because what she wanted to do, she had a really bad background, and she wanted to then learn how to coach, to give the skills to other people to overcome, you know, extreme trauma and life challenges like she had been through. And so she found a way of getting in front of Tony Robbins, getting his attention and getting his help. And that's thinking outside of the box. It's pretty, I mean, it could have completely gone wrong, but you've got to kind of come up with other ways, I think, of getting in front of people and make it and having a relevant conversation. Otherwise, like you say, you're going to disappear into the noise.
Well, and I don't disagree at all, but I do think it could also be simpler than that. It's just being open to opportunities. Like, I think that just changing that mindset itself, I'm sure you'll agree, but like, doing what she did is like a very important lesson to learn there. Like if you can really put yourself out of the way to get in front of that opportunity, that's a whole nother level. But I think even simpler than that, for example, when I was still working as a lifeguard, I was also a swim instructor. I also did some other jobs. I held 8 positions at one point at my first employer, just because that's what I wanted to do. But at this point, I only had a few. And I told my boss, I want to be a pool manager and a water aerobics instructor, both of which were basically like an upgrade from my 2 last positions. And I said both at once, and they're like, okay, what do you want to do about it? And I'm like, okay, I just want to be able to teach more, and I want to be able to help the team. I like working here, blah, blah, blah. I was able to communicate with them and tell them what I wanted to do. Now, the manager came a little ways later, but not 2 days later, one of the instructors didn't show up when I was lifeguarding. And so my boss was like, well, you can teach it. And that just threw me in the situation there. I was nervous about it. I almost told her no. But then I was like, you know what? I'm here. Might as well. And because of that, I started teaching. I still teach. Even to this day, like the 3 hours I still work during the quarantine are my 3 aerobics classes that I teach. And it's just interesting how if I wasn't open to the opportunity and vocalizing it, it wouldn't happen.
That's the thing. I think when opportunity comes, you have to say yes. Even if your fear says no, you got to say yes. You will miss so many opportunities in your life. Richard Branson said, when someone hands you an opportunity and you don't know how to do it, say yes and figure it out afterwards.
That's a good point.
You'll miss it.
I see you toyed with IGTV, the Instagram TV. I personally don't want to put the full episodes on there too long, really, because some of these episodes go for like 2 hours. Yeah. But I also don't want to be not on there, double negative there. I don't want to not be on there. What are your thoughts on that particular part of the platform?
Again, I've really only just dabbled a couple of times, and I think you kind of need to create content that's more specific for IGTV. I think that's where it starts to become more successful, and it's just really, I think it's just down to headspace and time to be thinking out that strategy and then creating that particular content. You can cut bits from various interviews, 10 minutes, I think, was it IGTV, about 10 minutes or something in general. Then you can do that kind of stuff, but at the moment, I haven't really focused too heavily on it. I have you have some fun and games uploading content to that platform as well. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
There's 2 ways to go about it, from what I understand. If you do Creator Studio with your business profile, you want to make sure your Instagram's business and your Facebook's business. I think you might have to have a Facebook page. There's a Creator Studio that makes it easier to upload. And there's also, if you go to Instagram.com, go to your channel, there's a little upload button that makes it a little bit easier too. Those are 2 ways I know about it. Otherwise, just sending it to your phone, and that's tedious.
Yeah, exactly. It's painful.
What does it mean to you to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more?
So this is the framework of the Pocket Mastermind and what it was built on, really. And the dreaming part, and I say this every time I say this, it sounds a bit cliche, but to dream, we got to wake up, right? And most of us are walking around in a hypnotized state of we're just living. We're not actually experiencing life, right? We're just kind of drones. We're
not present in the moment.
Look at our phone, and we get what's given to us, and we're just going from we're basically reactionary rather than being proactive. And a Harvard study found that only 3% of people have goals written down, right? So if you can see why, as I say, you can see why it's called the 1%, right? If only 3% of people have got goals written down, well, the other 97 are going to get what's given to them, and not all the 3 are going to be successful. So you've got the dream more is really about actually deciding, what do you really want? If I ask people, what do you want? And I've done this over and over and over and over again, the response is either, I don't know what I want. Well, that's not great.
You're going to figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you expect to get then? You can't, I'm not happy. I hate my job. I hate blah, blah, blah. Well, it's because you don't know what you actually want. I mean, if you knew what you wanted, then you got more chance of getting it. Just that's the starting point. Or the other response I tend to get is more money, bigger house, cars, blah, blah. No reason why. And it's not, and I don't think anyone really understands why. It's just because that's what they see on social media. That's what you kind of grow up thinking, oh yeah, what you need is a Ferrari and a big house and all of this stuff, and you go, why do you need that? Why does anyone need a 10-bedroom house other than to put their ego in a bit of it in each room? Because how many people use 10 bedrooms? Seriously, I mean, there's no real requirement for a house of that scale. And so if you really start to understand why do you want that, you start to understand that actually you probably don't want most of the things you do want. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting lots of stuff and doing things, but I think you got to start to unpack, what do you as an individual really want, and why do you want that? So that's kind of the dream bit. The learn part is then, well, there's probably a gap between where you are now and what your ideal life is. And what I try and say to people is, like, rather than 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10-year goals, think about, what would your ideal life be now if you could click your fingers? What would you be doing? Who would you be spending your time with? What would you be giving back? All of the things. What would you want your life to really look like if it was brilliant right now? And then work out, well, where are you versus that? Now, for some people, like, once you've actually do all of the work and understand what you really want, and why you really want it, you might be a lot closer to it than you think. You know, another thing that Tim Ferriss talks about is like he breaks it down into, well, what do you really want to own, or what do you want your lifestyle to be? Do you have to own it, or could you rent it? You know, things like, people say, oh, I want a house in the mountains, I want a house over here, and I've been on that trap before. And then you go, well, why would you want to own the place there that you're going to go for a couple of weeks a year when you could rent an even nicer place at a fraction of the cost, right? And so you start to work out, what do you need your income to be on a monthly basis to live the lifestyle that you actually want? People think, oh yeah, I'm going to save up 10 million, or I'm going to save up $1 million, but you're not, because what are you going to do? Then just save it up and then start spending it? Or that's not really,
or just like
life, is it?
Or this idea of retirement in a way.
Yeah, it's just nonsense. And because we're still ingrained with this old factory mentality of when you left school, went into a factory, worked until you couldn't barely bend over anymore, and then you got your retirement and you sat quietly and died 5 or 10 years later. And we just don't live like that anymore. So why wait until you're at the end of your life and in discomfort or whatever, and less mobile and less active, to actually have the best years of your life? Why not live that as you go? So the learn part really then is understand, where are you versus where you want to be? What skills do you need to develop to close that gap? Because it's about who do you become to get to that place. It's, you know, and that's where we're getting towards the become part. And then it's the do, right? It's great. You know what you want. You know where the gap is. You've built a plan now to get you to where you want to be. The magic bit is the doing, right? And unless you do it, it's just going to remain on paper. And so that's the third step, is doing, tracking, making and measuring, reassessing, and you keep doing that. And then the becoming is, you've achieved that particular goal or that phase of your life. And it's always on the move. But what you're able to do in the becoming section is to always reflect, celebrate, analyze what went well, what didn't go well, what do I need to do, how do I need to improve to keep moving forwards, and then gratitude. You've got to be grateful for what you do achieve, and do that on there's the kind of like micro cycles and more macro cycles within this, right? You can do this on a daily basis, you can do this on a weekly basis, you can apply it on a monthly, on a quarterly. You have your big vision, and then you break it down into basically daily cycles of this, and you can then make sure that you're achieving the micro objectives or the results that you need towards that big goal. So how many of these can I get through in this week? How many can I get through in the next week? And I find that more motivating than thinking, well, what's my 5-year goal? Because how do I know how long it's going to take me to get to somewhere? I might sell myself short, or I might be overly ambitious. You've got no idea. It's kind of like, well, what do I want, and how fast can I get it? How much of these things can I do this week that's going to get me towards that goal? And I think you'll move. Generally, I find you tend to move quicker in that, using that methodology.
I like it, and I feel like I'm still in the do more stage. I'm not necessarily doing enough. I'm not executing enough, and I find that my consistency is the main accountability issue, where I'm not able to pursue those endeavors as consistently as I had hoped. These interviews have been the only thing I've really been able to be consistent with. I told myself at the beginning of the year that I wanted to do my main series, the Omni content, every day, or at the very least every week. And I've only made 4 this entire year. And it's just like, I have to actually make one later today after this recording. I was going to make it yesterday and I still didn't do it. I don't know why I'm having such an issue with it. And I think it's just, once I get that execution down, between these interviews on the Omni content, I'm going to have the consistent baseline that I can build courses, do speaking engagements, do books. And I think that that's a prime example of that do step. I need to get to the do. I've already established what I want to do. And I think that's very important that you're talking about earlier, having that self-awareness. I was lucky enough to where I decided not to go to college at the end of high school. And I spent those years pursuing self-development. It's almost been a decade now since then. And I spent all these years pursuing that self-development. Did a little bit of college work, but not much at all in the grand scheme of things. And the things I learned were clear communication and critical thinking in that college. So I think it was worthwhile. But it was interesting because had I not done that, I would not have a clearer picture now.
Yeah, you've got to spend some time really understanding who are you? Who am I? What do I like? What don't I like? That's one of the big questions. What do I hate? Well, don't do any of that, right? If you don't know, that's the starting point. Particularly if you say, I don't know what I want. Well, start writing a list of all the stuff you don't want. And then you probably want the opposite. So that'll get you going with your list of the things that you do want. And then really dig into why. And then when you've asked why once, ask why again, ask why again, ask why again, until you get to the point where you really know why you want a particular thing.
And I think that minimalism is something that people often, as the kids say, sleep on, meaning like people just don't really register it much. Where if you look around my apartment, there's hardly very much stuff. I'm a techie, so I have 3 screens here. That's because my main work is on a computer. I want to have that. But I'm still only using 2 right now, and the second screen is not even really being used. It's mainly just this first main screen with the notes and you. And so, for example, I could probably still get rid of those and be happy. But I think that for me, I wanted that with the rest of the apartment, just a bed, a couch, TV, that's about it. There's nothing really else there. And so I think that if people can realize, hey, I don't really need much stuff, then perhaps I could be happier. And it'd be easier to move too.
Yeah, 100%. The way I look at stuff is it's all about the relationship. Because if you do buy it for fulfillment, which is the trap a lot of people fall into, it's empty. If you buy stuff because you're conscious of playing the game and it's just stuff for stuff's sake and there's not really an emotional element to it, it's fine. But what you'll find, or what I certainly found, is once you get to a level where you could buy pretty much anything you want, you choose not to. And it actually becomes more exciting knowing that you could buy a very fancy car or any of the watches or clothes or whatever that you want and then not buying it. That felt more empowering than the thought of being able to buy the damn thing. Do you know what I mean? I think if you go and buy something, you walk into a showroom and buy a Ferrari, it's probably a buzz for a short second, and then you're looking at this thing thinking, it's $250,000.
Yeah. What else could I have done with that money?
What am I doing? So I think it's far more empowering to know you could buy stuff like that and then choose not to and do something else. For me, that was kind of a moment for me where I thought, actually, I feel pretty good about myself.
Yeah, I like that. And you had me on your show too, and that was quite fun talking about divergent topics. What sort of things do you like to talk about on your show?
Most of what I talk about on my show, like I said kind of previously, was about how do people approach life. So what's their entrepreneurial approach? Why did they get into an entrepreneurial lifestyle? So not everyone is entrepreneurial. Some people work in different angles through startups, for example. So not the founder, but will work in startups. Like kind of why do you go down that kind of route? It's really just it's a lot about lifestyle. Mindset is a big thing because everything starts with this. So I'm really intrigued as to how do people approach challenges, issues, problems, opportunities. How do people get motivated? How do people stay disciplined? Because, the old cliche, motivation is a bit bullshit. It's mostly, right? Motivation's great for spurring the imagination and getting you to think around what can be possible. But but motivation is gone most of the time, particularly when you need it. It's discipline that sees you through. So you need to use the motivation to write the discipline, and then you need the willpower to follow through on that discipline.
Well, and one thing that people talk about in recent years is that motivation is more of a myth, because motivation comes after you do it. You don't get motivation to do it. Like right now, I'm talking about the Omni content. I don't have the motivation to do it, but I'm not going to get it until I do it.
Yes, exactly. So kind of action leads state in many ways, right? So if you start to do something, then you're more likely to carry on. It's a bit like when you don't feel like going to the gym. Right, you get there, and within 3 minutes, it's fine. Right? But you're sat on the sofa, and it's comfortable, and the human being wants to be lazy and comfortable. It does not like change and discomfort, and it will do everything it possibly can to avoid what's perceived as being pain and discomfort.
For sure.
And so you've got to try and find a way in your own mind of what you associate pleasure and what you associate pain as. If you have a big enough vision of what you want to achieve, whether it be in your health and your fitness or in financial terms or whatever it is, if you have a big enough, clear enough vision, then you can associate pain, massive pain, with failing to achieve that objective. That will then outweigh the perceived pain of getting your ass off the sofa and going to the gym, or eating the right thing, or whatever it is. I use those as easy, tangible examples, but that's where the discipline comes in from, because actually we're only motivated by our avoidance of pain and our desire for pleasure. They're the two things that motivate human beings. So if we can put in place triggers for ourselves, that means we're going to consistently run away from the pain and run towards the pleasure. It's all about that association.
And how you think about it too. And what you said there is very crucial. I want people to kind of rewind and listen back to that again. But another thing to kind of stack on top of that is the idea of systems and habit stacking, where if you can try to trick the brain into doing things. For example, I worked at a gym. It was very easy for me to just stop working and then go work out because I was already there. Yeah. Once I stopped working because of the quarantine, my habit of working out went out the window. It took me 2 weeks to even start working out again, which is crazy considering how often I was doing it before. But it was because my association, I made the click of like, hey, I'm at work, let's work out. Without that association, without that system in place, I lost that. So I think
it doesn't take long at all. It doesn't take long at all.
Yeah. And I think that if people can think about it more, that'll help.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why, the discipline is so essential. If you have it happens over and over again. They get people that at the start of the new year go, right, I'm going to have a New Year's resolution. I'm going to get myself in shape. No one really knows what they're doing. Number one thing I would suggest to anybody, if you want to do something new, educate yourself on how to do whatever it is. Don't just shoot in the dark. Don't just start eating salad and think that you're now eating healthy. It's not the way forward. Educate yourself on health and nutrition. That's a side note. But if you want to, but you get some people that are really, so you get get to the end of January, a lot of people tail off, but you get some that actually are pretty consistent, right? You get all the way through to summer, brilliant. Comes to holiday vacation time, go away for a week or 2 weeks, bump, never go back in the gym again.
Yeah.
And it might be 3 or 4 years down the line on another January where a resolution comes in, and by then you've put on another 20 pounds worse than you were before, and you start all over. And that's where the discipline has to come in. You've got to, as soon as you come back from that holiday vacation, you've got to go straight back in it. Whether you're not going to enjoy that feeling of going back, but as soon as you're in there, it'd be great, right? And you'll be back into the swing of things.
So one thing that keeps popping up in my mind, I try to ignore it because this is an interview about you, and I don't want to talk too much about myself or my brand too much, but we talked about, I think, on your show, the idea of self-development and stuff like that. And one term I created, self-eduvement, a combination of self-education, self-improvement, and self-development coming together. Since then, since I was on your show, it had evolved in a way where I wanted to find a way to make it simpler to market and talk about. So I created this personal poly-innovation system. And so essentially you have the self-education with the modular degree, having, like you said, you have to learn about it. You have to teach yourself in some way, shape, or form the skill or knowledge that you're trying to learn or do. Yep. And then you have the self-improvement aspect, which comes down to like atomic habits, habit stacking, or systems, and understanding the consistent application of execution, basically doing it consistently over and over again, just like you just said, David, making sure you're actually doing it and going out of your way, keeping that habit up. Don't let the holidays screw up that consistent habit. And then the final tier being self-development through the 4 pillars philosophy, which I'm not sure if we talked about or not. Did we?
Yeah, briefly, yeah.
Okay. The mind, body, spirit, and emotions.
Yeah.
And the reason why I have that last is that I see it more as a catalyst. Once you balance those pillars, which is a lot harder than people realize, I think, is that you start to become much better version of yourself. You start to understand yourself more. Self-awareness comes much more clearly. And that becomes more of an exponential catalyst on top of your consistent habits and the stuff you already learned.
100%.
Oh.
Yeah. And the things, I kind of, there's the 4 life skills that we don't get taught in school that we really should get taught in school. And kind of goal setting is number 1. Most people don't have goals because no one's got a clue how to. Like if it was ingrained from the early age around building visions around what do you want to achieve, and most, when you're a kid you don't know, but you only know what you know. Some ideas would start and it become a habit, right? You read Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography, and he's super disciplined on that. Every year he sets new goals, and he has done since he was young. And look where it got him. He got going all the way from Graz in Austria to governor of California, for Christ's sake. It's crazy, but that's the power of knowing what you're chasing after and being relentless at it. Money management, nuts, right? We're taught math at school, but not how to really apply it. How do we use that to look after our finances? We get caught in this trap of earn more money, but if you don't know how to manage the money you've got now, you can earn as much as you want, you're never going to be rich. Right? You got to understand how to control $1,000 or £1,000 before you can ever dream of getting close to 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000, right? Because it's just, you're never going to get there. The other thing is emotional regulation. I think, as you talk about, right, emotional regulation, emotional control, emotional intelligence is the real defining element between how you perform on a day-to-day basis, how you interact with other people. Because if you can't control your emotion in various scenarios, how do you expect to be in a boardroom, or how do you expect to lead other people? You've got to be able to understand your feelings and how other people feel, so that you don't say or do something that might cause more trouble than anything else, but also so you react appropriately, because you're going to be faced with difficult scenarios. You're going to be faced with clients that are difficult, with people that say no. And if you shout and scream in their face every time that they say no, or storm off, or do something vindictive, and this is where it kind of comes into the spiritual side as well, is understanding the ego. It's only the ego that becomes vindictive. If you start to do that, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah, you're not going to get hurt by saying, okay, yeah, absolutely, and actually taking the time to listen and finding the solution. You get more focused on the solution than on your ego being right, and then you'll be an awful lot better off. And then the other part is really health, and we've already touched on this. It's kind of health and nutrition, right? Why are we not taught about health and nutrition? Look at the state of the Western world. We've got obesity issues because it all stems from we don't have any vision, right? So you don't know what you want, you don't know who you want to be, you don't know what you want to look like, you don't have the discipline, therefore you don't have the education. So it's this perfect storm of all of this stuff, life skills that we really need. And if we're not getting taught it, we have our own responsibility to go out and learn it. The information's there, it's not hidden away, it's not secret, it's all written down.
Yeah, well, and that's interesting too, because I'm still kind of on that whole ego and the spirit pillar things. I've heard about that before, and when I learned about Stoicism and some other philosophies, I thought about how ego is a very important concept in spirituality, not just in the mental pillar, but obviously the spirit pillar. And when I talk about the spirit pillar, I often think of the bridge between the conscious mind and subconscious mind, and building that up. And that, if you also want to get into more, I would say, floaty space, the law of attraction and more manifestation, I think that comes from that bridge as well. But even in the more concrete sense, just making the neuron synapses connection stronger, I think is really key. And I think having that meditation through the spirit pillar. But I still haven't thought about the ego as much, which is a whole nother aspect behind it. Understanding why you are thinking this way and how you are not that important in this context. And people just don't like that idea.
The ego is incredibly powerful, and the ego is the other voice that you can hear that is generally detrimental to your progress, your relationships, your everything, right? If you do something that isn't in the best interest of you or anyone else around you, it's the ego and you've got to be able to see and hear that ego to be able to identify it. Once you get clear, Carl Jung talked about the two personalities, and once you get clear on hearing those two voices, you then have a greater control of which one you choose, and it is a choice. But until you become conscious of that, then we tend to react.
Yeah.
And react very quickly.
Mastering your shadow, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's your ego. That's the thing that reacts really fast. That animal kind of brain, I guess, is that's the ego from my perspective. And you've got to gain, as soon as you gain perspective of it, you start to gain a bit of distance. And that's where meditation comes in, right? The meditation's about creating that distance between you and your thoughts and your emotions and your body. There's a mantra that in yoga meditation that I do, which is around, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. And that gives you that distance, because we can go quite deeply spiritual here, but the spiritual side is the infinite part, whereas your mind is an accumulation of all of the information. All of your thoughts are just an accumulation of all the information you've gathered over the years. Your body is just an accumulation of all the food and stuff that you've gathered over the years.
And a manifestation of your thoughts too.
Correct. Yeah. And you are just, where are you? Where does you live? Is it in the brain, or is it in the fingertip? I don't.
Yeah.
You don't know where you exist. And the magic of these two individual cells that carried all of the memory of your ancestry from two different angles that in their own respect go back miles and miles, carried all of that memory information that knew to form you based off of all of that. So every part of your body has a memory of some description. We always just think of it as being the brain, but it can't be true, because my fingernail knew how to be go to be a fingernail from two original cells that weren't fingernails, right?
Well, and that's interesting too, because that exemplifies the 4 pillars. And one thing I often say is that the 4 pillars is often really similar to the 4 areas of yoga too. Yeah. And I think it's super interesting that you actually said that about the distance aspect. I've always thought about it in the idea of bridging connections and making things closer, understanding the dichotomy of the mind and body connection, and then how the spirit aspect affects the rest of it, and how your emotions are dramatically impact all of them as well. And bringing up in clutter, you talk about distancing yourself from each of those different areas. And my personal principle in life is balance. And you helped me achieve balance mentally there by establishing that dichotomy in my brain. I didn't think about it until you said it.
I think what you're saying is the connection between the conscious and the subconscious is absolutely right. That's what Napoleon Hill wrote about in Think and Grow Rich. That's what Andrew Carnegie gave to him in the first place, was the whole idea is actually, when you set your goals, the purpose of writing them down and repeating them out loud in the morning and in the evening and any other opportunity you can is because it embeds that into your subconscious mind, right? So Tony Robbins talks about this all the time, the reticular activating system, right? And when you go and buy a new car, suddenly you drive down the road and there's hundreds of the same car that you never saw before, and it's only because your subconscious is now seeing them and identifying them and flagging them to your conscious brain. And every day we're going along, and our conscious brain can only deal with so much. Our subconscious brain takes every single impression and stores it, and we don't even know it. So 99.9% of everything that goes on around us is being stored. Even when you're asleep, your subconscious brain is still listening and understanding everything that's going on, but your conscious brain can't do that. So the more you train that connection, as you say, your subconscious will identify opportunities to fulfill the desires that you've got, whatever those goals are. So the more you repeat it, the more it's the connections formed. And when you're going along and you're not consciously seeing stuff, suddenly opportunities appear. People go, "Oh my God, can you believe it? I just thought about this and then this appeared." Yeah, because it was always in front of your face. But the more you think about it, the more times it appears. And manifestation is absolutely real. Yeah. Well, and the important thing I'll just add on that is manifestation is real in both directions, and it's driven by the energy of the emotion you put behind something. So if you're fearful of being poor. I always liken it to if you ski or snowboard or anything else like that, right? When you learn, they teach you to look where you want to go. Don't look at the tree because you'll hit the tree. Well, the same is true in life. If you're worried about not having something and you're fearful of it, you could probably get stuck in that position because the energy that you're in is attracting to you that what you think about, and it's not limited, it's not restrictive to whether it's a positive energy or a negative energy. So you have to kind of, go after stuff with absolute excitement and faith and energy that you can achieve it, and you stand a much greater chance.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what both of the things we said was very accurate in their own right. So like distancing and bridging connection, I think are both important for different reasons. But I think that whoever's listening should think about what they need to do first. If perhaps they are already too distant, they don't necessarily see themselves bringing themselves closer. If they're too close already, they see their ego too much and need to distance themselves more. And just depending on that self-awareness that you had before. Moving on to another question here, because I feel like we're going to keep going on a tangent there if we keep doing it. But how have you stayed consistent or persistent in your life?
So this again, I operate very much in habits. James Clear habit stacking. When I read Atomic Habits, I was like, oh, that's how I've kind of lived my life, and I always figured it was because I'm somewhere on the autism spectrum, because I like that kind of patterns. I see patterns in everything I create, and I create efficiencies in doing things, and so therefore I try and remain as consistent, as persistent as possible by putting in various systems. I do things the same way every morning. I do things the same way when any task I do, I find the most efficient way of doing it, and I do it repeatedly. When I go back to when I was in a band, it used to fascinate me that I used to pack up and set up and pack down everything in the same way every gig, no matter what, in the same order. The drummer, different every time. Right? Every time we played thousands of gigs, and every time he'd find a different way of setting the kit up and packing it back down again. And I think
maybe that's why he was so nervous.
And he was always last. He was always last to be ready. But it just astonished me that for me, like even before that, when I used to help another band and crew for them, and I used to help set the stuff up, and I used to set the drum kit and stuff, I still did that the same way. I wasn't even playing the damn thing, and I set this thing up the same way. But some people just don't find patterns, and that's where it's very hard to make progress, because things take a different length of time every time. How do you know, oh, it's going to take me half an hour, when sometimes it might take you an hour, and sometimes it might take you half? If you do it the same way every time, it might not even be the best way, but at least it's consistent, and you'll know how to fit it into your day.
Well, and I think that also too, I don't necessarily think it has to do with the autism. I think it's just more about being a systematic thinker, which I think is really interesting too, because it's a skill that people can develop. But there's also people like you and I who just naturally kind of see the patterns anyways. I got in trouble as a lifeguard because I would try to do things to help people get more united together. So I felt like we were getting too divergent in a way as a team. And so I try to do things like set up a group me chat, or like this little chat group to try to get people to build back up. And I got in trouble for it because it wasn't official with the team or something like that. And my actions were in a good intention, but the way I executed wasn't good. And I was a kid anyways, I was like 17. And so it's just interesting how seeing those patterns got me into trouble. But if I didn't see those patterns, things would have gotten worse, I feel like, too. So it's interesting.
Yeah, but no one died, right? So that's called experimentation. That's that's progression through failure. You got to fall over and get back up. That's all it is. Yeah.
Well, and I think that too, the whole theme of the show, Polymath, is that in order to become a polymath, you have to experiment over and over again and really try to do many things. And so something I ask all my guests too is, what is a polymath to you?
I think for me, it's someone who is inquisitive, curious, because that's what life is all about, right? It's kind of actually you are intrigued by stuff and you want to understand how do things work. And you look at the operation, the functioning of things. We take so much for granted that we see in front of us, and even to a leaf or a banana, like how the hell did that thing become a leaf or a banana, right? And so I think a polymath is someone who, for me, is someone who becomes very interested in lots of different things and wants to understand how does something work? How did something come about? How could something be made better? You know, and you see lots of, I guess, people like Thomas Edison, for example, you know, didn't just decide I'm going to invent a light bulb. There was the radiogram. There's so many different inventions because he was looking at how do I improve different elements of human life, and I think they're the interesting people.
Yeah. Well, not to get too on all tangent there, but Thomas Edison's kind of an asshole in a way. But
yes, I agree with that.
I think it's actually the first time I've cursed on a podcast, ironically. But let's move on before I get a little bit too more.
I'm much more of a Tesla.
Yeah. Nikola is always awesome
because I think he was an incredible human being, but unfortunately, not being American, he was never going to get the publicity.
I don't think it was that he wasn't an American. He just wasn't able to articulate and be communicative. So there's a podcast I was reading from Walter Isaacson, who created the book Think Like a Genius kind of thing, or Thinking Like a Genius. He talks about how geniuses like Tesla and the guy who made the first modern computer design, I can't remember his name at the top of my head, but they both made great ideas and pioneered their areas, but they weren't able to communicate or market their ideas. And sometimes they're even antisocial in a way too. I think Nikola Tesla was very much like that. And because of that, he wasn't able to do the things he needed to do. He was a lone genius. Whereas Edison, he may not have been the greatest person. He was able to have a team around him and work with that team to get things done. Most of the inventions that he is credited for was from his team.
Of course, yeah. Very interesting human being.
There was something I was going to ask you there, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, well. So let's try to take this in a more rapid fire action then, because I have some questions here that don't necessarily need long answers, but I'm curious to see, for one, what was it like to work at Virgin?
That was good. I think that's a great example of where a founder had a inbuilt culture. The culture was him and his personality, and through the growth of the Virgin Group from the 60s all the way through to now, there's still elements, obviously. The culture was still existed. A fun place to work where people supported. It was a great culture. There was just everyone got on well. We went, you know, on holidays together for years after. So
that's awesome. Well, and then that kind of, I actually didn't have this written down, but I'm curious, what do you think personally, just like Virgin Galactic?
Well, I'm in two minds about the whole Virgin Galactic. I don't even know what Virgin Galactic is anymore. It seems to be transitioning into supersonic passenger flight, normal, you know, commuter travel or commercial travel now. Seems to have gone a bit quiet around the orbital stuff.
Yeah, well, and I feel like even with SpaceX and Virgin Galactic, I think it's both going to be. I was talking with someone about this, like the last episode or something like that. They're on their show where, whenever that space travel is like cool, it's amazing to go to Mars and Moon. And I'm actually watching a show called The Expanse, which is literally a show about how Earth colonized the entire solar system. And it's super interesting to think about. But the problem is, we still need to fix our problems on Earth. We still need to do things on Earth better. And so I think having that travel around the planet using that like higher atmosphere travel, I think is super important. And so these companies trying to do that, I think is a very interesting idea. There's also the idea of seasteading, which building cities on the ocean, I think is cool too.
Yeah, I think the thing is, we just got this. We're creating so much of a bloody mess on this planet that we just need to fix that first, like you say, and deal with the problems we're causing, rather than adding new ones. I would say I think Elon Musk and SpaceX probably had a bit more of a bigger mission than trying to just do like space travel, commercial space travel. To what end, really? At least SpaceX had the idea of actually it's a commercial, more of a B2B type operation than just going up there just to see the curvature of the Earth and come back down again.
And the ethos of PolyInnovator in my own personal life too is that the idea of #MakeAChange. And even with my other brand that I built ages ago before PolyInnovator, I had the same ethos there too. So for the past 9 years since I made that first brand, that how make a change idea of make a change in the world, I think for other people, inspire those people too. I think it's really important. And that's one thing is that we have to change what we're doing here before we can really expand out successfully. What lessons did you learn at Virgin?
What lessons did I learn at Virgin? A lot around. I kind of grew up a fair bit at Virgin. and I learned a lot around working across different business functions, stakeholder management, client relationships. I had a lot of different roles within Virgin. I moved around and added strings to my bow specifically, and it's kind of, that's where I really developed a lot of my skills in the corporate world were through the different roles I did at Virgin.
I love that. And I think the interdisciplinary aspect between your different roles is probably why you made a prime guest for the show too. Something about one of my old guests told me is this idea of a COVID resolution. Now, you and I both started doing interviews around the same time, but what is your COVID resolution to you?
I haven't really done a COVID resolution. If it sounds a bit
People haven't
lame
thought about
answer, but yeah, I don't. To be honest, I think I'm always making resolutions. I don't really. It's kind of making decisions, right? So what am I going to do? What am I not going to do? How am I going to live my life? What do I want? And they're continuously happening. I think I wouldn't say there's anything specific as a result of COVID. My advice for anyone who wants one would probably be take greater focus of how you manage your money, because this thing isn't over. It could get worse before it gets better, and it sure as hell won't be the last thing in most of our lifetime that comes along that's bad news.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised when the next one happens, whatever the cause is.
Well, 5 years ago, Bill Gates did a TED Talk about how we're not prepared for a global pandemic. And guess what? He was right. I know people don't necessarily trust Gates. They get, some conspiracy theorists get all weird about the whole vaccines, but he did say it like 5 years ago. Whether or not he's responsible, I don't care. But I'm just saying, I don't think he is.
Yeah, there are some interesting conspiracy theories out there, and I love exploring them just like the next person. But you've got to ask yourself, on most of the occasions, to what end? Most human beings live for less than 100 years. What does anybody gain from actually the outcome of any of these conspiracies? No one would ever be around to see the result of it, because if you believe it, it's been happening for century after century after century, and the Rothschilds of the the head of the lizards or something. So
oh man, that's okay. Let's change the subject before we get too out of hand here. So now I just want to say too that I don't think Bill Gates is doing anything malicious. But what are your goals for this year for the show?
So really, it's just been a case of this year's been really around me gaining the experience, the enjoyment, understanding what will it become. I deliberately started fairly broad, and the idea of it then starting to become more specific, more niche down as I start to understand the people that are listening, the people that I talk to more and more on a daily basis around what's going to help other people, what's going to help a specific group more. So it's really that's really it. Really, this year is much around defining the show's identity.
Yeah. Well, and I remember earlier I was going to tell you something. I just realized what it was. My last guest on the show, Kareem Mustafa, him and his brother founded Tribe Tactics, which is a content repurposing company. They also created this idea of this original series, which is kind of based on Netflix idea of an original series, where as a content creator, we create this idea of something that we're creating originally. So such as our interviews, for example, the Pocket Mastermind and the Polymath PolyCast. I actually approached the podcasting with the sense of solocast. So for the first 42 episodes, I did it by myself. And then once the COVID hit, I was like, okay, let's use this opportunity for good. And I started having these interviews thanks to Matchmaker.fm, which is what we matched on too. Because of that platform, I was able to start doing interviews, which before then I didn't have an idea of how I would do it. And I think you're my 39th guest now. In just the past couple months.
That platform's amazing. It's been so good. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting because of that, we created our original series kind of by accident in a way. My main series, Omni Content, was deliberate. When I first came across their original series concept, I changed what I was doing into this Omni Content series. But even then, it was still something I was exploring. Like I said, I've only done 4 this entire year. But I just wanted to share that idea with you, so I thought that would help you, because you're thinking about how would I use IGTV? Well, maybe what you could do is take each episode that you do and record a video of you on IGTV reacting to what they said, and just kind of throwing your opinion on their ideas that they shared, stuff like that.
Good shout. Yeah, there's definitely there's so much room to grow. And I think the temptation with a lot of these things, I know the message is always niche, but don't cut yourself off to potential opportunities too soon is the way I try to think of it. Like you can find the angle, the relevance in all sorts of conversation from all sorts of different types of people. You know, I speak to all different types of people. We're all still humans, and we're all still having experiences. So how do you can still find the theme in the middle of that and not be too restrictive into, I'm only going to speak to startup founders, or I'm only going to speak to, you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? There's a narrowing pool, and you want to gain as much, my view is you want to gain as much experience as you possibly can.
Well, yeah.
As fast as you can.
Well, and like Gary Vee, Roberto Blake, they all say that you need, and like even Mr. Beast too, they're all saying that you need to create like 100 videos, and it doesn't really matter how good they are. Just get the experience so you actually know what to work on. I'm sitting around like 60 or 70 videos, no, 60 videos, I think like 70 polycasts at this point. And it's like, I'm not there yet, but I feel like I'm super more experienced than when I started out, and probably more than most people even. And then one thing I was going to say too is that like, I've been told for the past like 9 years, because like I said, I started way back in 2011 with my blog, to niche down. And every single time it made me feel uncomfortable. It made me like it's my antithesis in a way of to niche down, because polymathy is literally opposite of that. I'm not a specialist. I'm someone who's doing many different things. And so that's what I decided on, like that is my niche. And so the actual topics are the sub niches, such as education and the entrepreneurship and marketing and whatever we ended up wanting to talk about. And so that I actually made a polycast recently, a micro polycast of the anti niche, where I think it's kind of interesting that people can go check out. But
exactly right. You look at the biggest, most people like Gary Vee. He's not specific. He's not niche down. He's Tony Robbins. Same thing, right? It's like kind of personal development. It's a bloody big topic, right? And it talks to business skills. It talks to mindset. It talks to emotional skills. There's all the different angles, and you can. I think the important thing is to learn how to have specific conversations with specific people within that broad funnel. Yeah.
Well, and I'm not calling anybody out, but I was on a show recently that had a great host, cool concept of a show. I listened to the episodes; they did a good job. But like whenever the person was asking me questions, I felt that like they were too niche down, and I wasn't able to accurately articulate what I was trying to talk about. And because of that, I feel like my performance as a guest was hindered because of the way the questions were structured. And I think that's one reason why I work so hard on the questions for people like you on the show, to make it as unstructured as possible, but also still following a formula, like a system that we talked about earlier. I have a system, but the way I approach the questions is more free form. So that way we don't, like you said, miss out on something and shoot yourself in the foot.
Exactly. The way when I spoke to you, it's what I think about is, what do I want to know? Because if I want to know it, someone else probably wants to know it. And so I just ask the questions that I want to know, that I'm interested in. Yeah, definitely. All right. So the last rapid fire question, I guess you could say, because these weren't really that rapid fire, but what made you want to start a podcast? Probably covered it really, but it was around me get into the minds of other people and understand how they approach things, and it's all experience, and let other people listen into that. Yeah. How can we inspire others to live happier lives? This is kind of a concept you were talking about earlier. Well, there's a concept of, and this is something to think about, is all of our lives. Siren. I should have paused, but this was good. Yeah, don't worry. So there's a concept that I think is worth bearing in mind and being conscious of, and that is all of our lives will either serve as an inspiration or as a warning to other people. So you can choose, how do you want to be seen? Do you want to be that inspiration, or are you going to end up being a warning? And that gives you a very active choice at any moment when anything comes along, is how do you live your life? Are you doing the right thing? Are you doing what's best for yourself, for other people? Are you treating people in the way that they should be treated? Or are you sitting around not doing very much, not contributing, not progressing, not developing? Well, that's what's that's going to be the warning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I find it far more motivating to think, actually, I need to be an inspiration to,
Yeah.
you know, those around you and those that come after,
Yeah.
because it's
No.
that's what you're going to be, one of the two.
Yeah, for sure. What you're saying there, David, makes me think of like legacy and ikigai, and like what are you going to be known for? And
Yeah.
one of my old guests, Ranjit, he mentioned something to me that really stuck with me, kind of in a negative way, because I didn't like it. But what he said was pretty profound. Is that even as people who are polymathic, people who do many different things, you could be a master level in many different areas. But history is only going to usually remember you for one thing. Leonardo da Vinci pioneered light physics, ocular science, anatomy, botany, sculpting, and like even war machine creation. And yet he's only really known for painting. Same thing for Michelangelo too.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that's the problem,
yeah.
isn't it?
And so so he said it like you're only going to be known for one thing, and what do you want that legacy to be? And because of my natural inclination to do many different things, I was like, what do I want to know for? And I think the idea of just knowing what your ikigai is, what do you want to be known for, and then you can approach that in the idea of like, how can I inspire people through that?
Yeah, and I think you can be known for providing the next step up for the people to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, you know, with the great inventors of the past, primarily, that's what they really have known for, right? Unconsciously, that's what we know them, because they made the big steps forward. The Wright brothers got us up into the sky.
Yeah.
And it's not understanding, I think, if you can then be whatever that means to the next generation, you can pave the way forward. That means that, you know, people can educate themselves more effectively. You don't have to go down a particular route. You know, I think there's a whole shift coming in the self-development, the educational space. I think the old system is creaking at best. Yeah. Right? So I see opportunity all over the place. How do you help other people teach themselves to fish?
Well, and I see an opportunity right now in this conversation to plug in my personal PolyInnovation system once again there, because that's the reason why I'm doing it, because I started out with self-education. In fact, my Omni-content plan is 700 content ideas long, or 800 really in a way. And so that's going to take years. Even if I were to do it daily, that's going to take years. And one thing I had in there was the concept of self-development, self-education, self-improvement, and all these content ideas are similar in nature, but my thesis is how they're different, and how you do need to explain self-education is different than self-development. And so I was going to have different phases of content down the line of self-development improvement, but I realized that I'm talking about all three now, and the personal PolyInnovation system is about all three, so I can't just do one now. And so I think that being able to understand that, and especially during this time where there's a lot of hypergrowth in many different areas, and you need to be challenging yourself and growing right now to take advantage of that and see the opportunity.
Oh yeah, 100%. You've got to, and I think the difficult thing is trying not to do too much in one go, right? You start to have this big vision and go, oh, yeah, I'm going to do all of these kind of things. And for me, when I end up in that position, I find it very hard to get one thing done, because I'm like, oh shit, now where do I start? You know, it's difficult.
And that's kind of one thing I'm finding myself doing right now, is that I have too much on my plate, but I need to work on doing one thing at the other. So one thing I talk about a lot is micro focus, having the deep work and setting systems in place to really make things more efficient. Batching content, for example, or content repurposing is another way to go about it, and trying to maximize the reach of each post instead of having to just create. Same thing for Gary Vee's document over create kind of concept too. The next question actually might be helpful for this is, how can we set personal goals and achieve them?
So I think I probably touched on it a bit, but I think the way I prefer to approach it is come up with a vision. Describe, what does your ideal life look like? Right? Think about from that point of view, where do you live? Not just the building, but you'll get to that point, but why do you live there? Do you always live there, or do you want to be able to move around? Because these are all important questions, because if you want to be able to be more flexible, like I don't know, spend the summer somewhere and spend the winter somewhere, then is owning the house the right thing, or do you want to rent? It might be either one. Yeah. What kind of role? Then you're going to think about, well, what do you want to do for a living, right? If you've got an office job, is it one where you can work remotely, or do you need to work for yourself? And if you do work for yourself, what do you want to be doing? All of these kind of things. Really think about, try and build that picture and see it and kind of feel it. What does it look like? And then be as specific as you possibly can. Once you start to design things, like what does the house look like? Start to draw a picture of the bloody house, because until you do that, you're never going to see the opportunity to get it. And if you start from that vision perspective, which is you can write it out longhand, this is what I want my life to look like, you can then start to break that down into tangible goals. And I tend to like focus in on, what's the wealth side of things. You can either bucket it all into one. You can do net worth and kind of income, because they might be separate, but there's like a wealth bucket. I think you need to have a health and well-being bucket, which is kind of your physical health and your mental health, and and spirituality kind of fits into there as well. Then your relationships, your family, your romantic relationships, your friends, your colleagues, your network. And then there's kind of like the fulfillment part, which I think is, what are you doing to develop? Because that's where our fulfillment really comes from, our growth and our contributions. And what are we doing to build ourselves, and what are we doing to help others to achieve what they want to achieve? And I think if you can bucket them into those angles, you can then start to break them down into tangible tasks and tangible goals, right?
Right.
I need do the Tim Ferriss method, go in a 4-hour work week and go and have a look at the TMI, the total monthly income, because then you can build out what does your vision look like, how much does it cost, go and cost it up, because you might think, I need to be a millionaire, and then you work out, actually I can live my lifestyle for $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Shit, suddenly it's become tangible. How do I get $5,000 a month? Well, I've got my job, or I've got this income. How do I get more income streams so that I can get there faster? Right? Suddenly you've just developed your dream life in a very short space of time.
Well, and as you said earlier, work your way back. And I think one thing we also talked about earlier is people really need to learn more about personal finance. I took a class in high school that was required for it. I didn't learn jack in that class, but I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I learned a lot more from that. Even though it's not even the greatest personal finance book, it's a very good one to start out with. And I think it's interesting too, because for me, I thought about it. $2,000 a month is probably ideal right now, so I can pay off any debt that I might have. Like I got into debt to build my computer because I was hoping I could build my credit history. Turns out PayPal credit doesn't actually report to the credit bureau, so I'm not even building credit history. It's a whole nother tangent there.
Things we learned.
Yeah, things we learned. And so the point is that like I have the debt I need to pay off, and I also have to pay my rents, and I want to be able to save money too. And so I realized that $2,000 is probably ideal to do all three of those things with a little bit left over on top. And so I think that being able to identify that, and there's actually a tool that I'm not sure if you know of or not called Notion, and their website's notion.so, where basically it combines project management and Kanban boards with databases and documents all into one system, so that you can actually organize a life operating system, as a lot of these Notion people call it, or even a second brain, as some of the Silicon Valley people call it, and organize a lot of the data in your life, such as expenses and keeping track of habits and daily journaling, all these things into one tool. Instead of using a task management tool and Google Docs and Sheets and Airtable, you can put it all into one. So I wanted to share that with you too.
That's a great idea. And anything where you can amalgamate lots of different sources, but as you start to build, if you want to build wealth, you're going to have money in lots of different places. It might be small amounts to begin with, but you're going to need trading accounts or investment accounts. I would avoid trading to begin with, but investment accounts, you're going to need some kind of saving account, because you always want some kind of cash, easy access cash. You're going to have your current account, so your checking account, whatever. You're going to have it in all different places. So you need an aggregator for that. And in the UK, there's a bunch of different ones. I'm sure there's some in the States where you can plug all of your different accounts into, and then you'll be able to see everything that you've got. And that helps you then to play the game of tracking your net worth, right? You know what you own in a property, or you own everywhere else, and you're able to then see it in one place, and it becomes more of a game.
Right.
And think of it as, the game I played was token collecting, because money brings with it fear and stress.
Yeah.
Turn it into a game. If it's tokens, how many tokens can I get? Right. Suddenly it becomes fun and far less stressful, and worked for me, so it might work for someone.
Gamification is a very interesting concept, and just a small little tangent. With the modular degree, I took the idea of skill trees from video games and to try to apply it towards education. So you can go down a different skill tree in a course, and I think that just being able to gamify it is very important too, just in general in life. There's actually Habitica and some other like RPG-based task management systems that help you track your goals and make it more of a game in life, so you can like level up in real life. I think it's pretty cool. Before we wrap up, my last question is, how do you want to help people?
So for me, it's really about helping other people identify what they want from their lives and helping them put plans in place, build a strategy, build a plan to get there, and support them with the mindset to do so. And that's really my passion, is helping people really, really, really identify and get excited about what they actually want, and then build that strategy and then chase after it and get it done. And there's so much that goes around making that a thing, but that's really it.
Helping them find their ikigai in a way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. So where can people find you online?
Best place is probably pocketmastermind.com, or search social at pocketmastermind. Pretty much everywhere, apart from Twitter, which the Twitter handle is I've got one letter too many, so it's Pocket Mastermind without the E in the pocket.
Well, that's fine. Well, and then
find that out after it's too late, but there we go.
Well, I wonder if you could do Pocket MM or something like that. That might be good too. But
different scenario. There's different combinations I could certainly do.
David Bell or something like I'll make sure I have links in the description for you. And then besides checking you out, checking out the show, what could be the call to action for the audience today?
I would head over to the website. The content's building. You can directly from the website. There's links to all of the podcasts, whether you want to listen to them on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or watch it on YouTube. Different articles. I've just revamped it, so there's more articles are going on as we speak, and so just keep an eye out. There'll be more stuff, and if anybody out there fancies coming on the podcast and you got an interesting story to tell, there's a contact form. Give me a shout. Yeah, well, and I think just to kind of mention there too, we're both actually just revamped our websites, and so that continuous improvement is a prime example right there. That's what we talked about earlier. 100%. And I'm going away. I'm going traveling for a month in a couple of weeks, but then after that, I'll be around, and I'm going to focus a bit more on coaching. So if anyone wants a bit of help with identifying on what they want to gain out of their lives, then for a small group of people, I'll be working with them. Perfect. And by the time this comes out, probably it'll be around that time anyways. So perfect. Well, thank you for coming on the show. No, thank you for inviting me. It's been good fun. Yeah. This is Dustin Miller and David Bell on the PolyMath Podcast.